Welcome on Tattoo Senti. Perfume? Do you like it? Well, on Tattoo Senti, the first perfume podcast, we can't stop talking about it. So, here we smell it all. We smell perfume ingredients, we smell perfume with its perfumers creators, and we also talk to the creator of perfume brands. I'm Bettina Aykroyd, your hostess and your perfume expert. So let's meet up every week on Tuesday on Tattoo Senti for a perfume talk. So welcome again on Tattoo Senti, the first perfume podcast. Creativity, innovation, quality and business, are they by any chance the essential ingredients so that a perfume brand can cross the centuries and still remain within the family? The question could be asked. For sure, this is how Farina 1709 has remained in place. It is the first eau de cologne designed by the oldest dynasty of the world of perfumery, by the Farina family, still in Cologne, but also still in the same building, still in operation, and even still family-owned. Today, Johann Farina represents the 8th generation, and I have the pleasure to receive him at home in Paris. His most important mission consists in being the guardian of the tradition and to prolong Farina 1709, the oldest eau de cologne today. Just like his ancestor, Johann is a very creative man with a shrewd business sense who travels around the world in order to defend the value of this eau de cologne. A smart gentleman, although very discreet, Johann Maria is a passionate of history and takes care scrupulously onto the most comprehensive Farina family records. So let's move on to the perfume tracks of Farina 1709 with his ancestor Johann Maria Farina. Here.
Yes.
Hello, Johann. So, the next exhibition at the International Museum of Perfumery in Grasse is dedicated to the story of the Eau de Cologne. So, as Farina's 8th generation, how have you taken part in this exhibition?
Yes, we had taken in the exhibition. On the one side, we gave them different bottles, documents around from our archive, and also they took some of our donations from the previous years to show in the exhibition. On the other hand, I supported and brought documents about the history of the last 300 years of eau de cologne, especially of Farina, to Jean-Claude Elena. So he was able to start his book, beginning with Farina, beginning with the creator of eau de cologne, and that was the beginning of 300 years of eau de cologne history up to today.
Uh-huh. So it was more a help through documents than actually with objects or flacons, or did you also give some object from your museum?
No, both.
Yeah.
One was to give the documents from the archive for the catalog and for the presentation, and on the other side, the lending of documents and bottles for the exhibition, as well as also we gave advices of videos and pictures and so on.
Now, let's discover more about Johann Maria Farina. So, which is your strongest olfactive souvenir?
Actually, when I was young, my parents took me to southern Italy, and the impression of the flowers of a orange tree Hein is really it's overwhelming, and you never forgive that. And that's probably the most olfactive impression still. So
Today.
I try to copy it with different orange and bergamot trees on my terrace at home to give this impression in Cologne in a small.
But is it still is it the same as in your memory, or is
No,
it different as you are in Cologne?
No, the problem is I cannot get such an enormous amount of trees. And on the other side, I combine different trees. I have citrus trees from bitter orange, sweet orange, bergamot, citrus, lemon, and these flowers are all together giving the blend, which is quite interesting, but it's not so overwhelming with one scent of bitter orange.
So you traveled, in fact, when you were young, in the heart of the raw material around the world. Just like, in fact, your ancestor. So what do you remember most of this period?
Your place, I thought about it, and actually because of the cars and the traffic, these cities have many in common, but not in positive way.
Right.
In previous years in Grasse, it had a special smell because the factories were not so closed. The extraction could be smelled on the street. On the other side, all the farmers burned their waste and burned their trees when they cut it off. So the whole valley around Grasse smelled from the burning, on the other side from the factories. But now this is less and less. So it's difficult to tell where you are by smell.
So tell me, what are the first memories that you have of the Haute Cologne?
That's difficult to say because I was brought up with it. So I cannot imagine that I didn't know it or that I didn't have contact to it. So I was brought up right away with it. And it's something which accompanies my life.
And still does.
Yes.
But when you were a young boy, did you feel like still wearing it, or you had you wanted to smell some other perfume?
Yes, of course I smelled other perfumes. For example, one of my favorite perfume when I was young was Eau Sauvage, and is still one of my favorites. But actually, normally I don't wear perfume, otherwise I cannot smell the perfumes.
So, in fact, the Farina family has always been guided by an exceptional sense of smell, an exceptional nose. Was it an evidence for you to become a perfumer?
Yes, I wanted to do this from beginning on, yes. I wanted to continue this tradition, and I found it also very interesting, this field. And you'll never finish to learn. So every year, every new harvest is something new and challenging. So it's a really interesting field.
So, what are your first memories of the Haute Cologne?
Yeah, I was brought up with it, so I cannot tell you what are my first memories, because it was always present.
All right. The Farina family has always been guided by an exceptional nose. Was it an evidence for you to become a perfumer?
It's difficult to estimate how exceptional the nose are, but actually in early age I was willing to do this and to continue this. And so my life and my education was based on this idea. And I wanted to do it, but I didn't know if I would succeed and if I would do it at the end, or be able to do it. But now, at an age over 60, you see, I did it.
Right.
And I'm now for many decades in this business. But actually, the exceptional nose is one thing, but the idea of sense in your mind is probably much more important to get the continuous composition.
What is the olfactive education to Farina's perfumer? Is there a ritual? Is there something very special that was handed on from generation to generation?
Both. On one side, for example, I got a working place in my father's laboratory at the age of 9, and first with chemical things, but that I dismissed. Then I wanted to work with perfumes and ingredients. So I started very early with first, probably you may say, in-house training from my father and especially from my mother. She's also a perfumer and designer. And she's probably more perfumer than my father in the end. And later, I went outside to learn this business as an apprenticeship in other companies before I started to, in the end, to study pharmacy, to get the whole...
So you did some training in Germany or in France?
Yes, I've been in Holzminden, the German center of...
Arman and Reimer at
No,
that time?
no, I've been with Dragoco.
Ah, yes, sorry.
Before I had been to Bayer to do a more commercial and business education, but I've been with Dragoco.
All right. What did your father pass on to you? Do you have a story to tell us, something that is still in your mind today and is useful?
No, my father lived the life which I continued then. And tradition, and to keep on this tradition, is a very wealthy and very important thing. So it's worth doing it, and and it's really something you can give to your next generation, and that's what I value very much.
And then you said your mother was a designer and a perfumer.
She is still.
Sorry?
She is still.
She is, all right. Did she give you some advice that you still remember?
Not an advice, but we are working together now for 30 years. So it's not an advice, but it's a discussion, and it's a co-working and questioning to each other more. It's not an advice because everybody has to find himself, his ideas, but to recall it or to questioning it to each other is probably more worthful.
It's through discussions that she taught you give you some good tips. Then after your business school, so yes, you did in fact the perfumery training at Dragoco. Who are the perfumers who striked you most that you came across?
That can be made by different names, because my way was different, because the aim was clear, to go to our house and to keep it on and not to work for others. So on the one side, I wasn't allowed to go to everybody and weren't welcome. On the other side, many other perfumers were quite interested to see me and talk to me, but didn't let me inside their laboratories or inside their thoughts.
Yes, perfumery is very secret business.
Yes, in previous decades, yes. It's getting probably more and more open, because scientific evaluation and scientific analysis is much more clear today, so everything is open.
But nevertheless, maybe there's, even if you didn't meet them or you couldn't come across them, there are some works of some perfumers that you appreciate, that you
Yes.
like.
From my childhood on,
Yes.
my favorite perfume was Eau Sauvage.
Eau Sauvage. So
So
you're very
Rodnitz,
keen. Yes.
Edmund Rodnitz was one of my, not idol, but one of the heroes of perfumery. And I must admit that also Jean-Claude Ellena is really one of the best perfumers, and he got the idea of simplifying and more pure perfumes, and his last perfumes like Terre de Metz is made of less ingredients than before, and so it's a much more clear and strict perfume. It's something like in Germany we had the Bauhaus area,
Yes.
Bauhaus time, where everything was functional, to leave everything off which is not necessary. And that's the same way he is now telling about perfume creations. And that's something I really appreciate. And probably his last creations are really interesting thing about the neo-colognes.
All right. So, you are very passionate about the history of perfume. What was your most exciting discovery?
One of my most exciting discovery was that Farina, or my ancestors, delivered the whole family Bonaparte. Because we are now in Germany. 200 years ago, Cologne was French. But now we are more than 200 years part of Germany. And we had 2 or 3, probably 3 wars, which made between Germany and France. Also on the German side, French history and French customers were not so welcomed in the documentations, in the books about Farina. So it was really forgotten a bit. And it was always said that these were our interesting customers, famous customers. But in that extent, how they used Farina cologne was really astonishing. And not only Napoleon Bonaparte used 2 bottles a day, also his whole family, like his sisters, his brothers, his mother, all were customers. And that is easily proven in our archive. And that was really, I know it from childhood on, but not to that extent, with these huge numbers and continuously over the time of their reign. And what is really interesting about it, when Napoleon was customer, it was a French product. He didn't buy a foreign product. And that's also why many French think eau de cologne is not a German product, it's a French product. I think it's more a European product.
Yes. So, and now follow me to Johann Maria Farina's lab. So, among the ingredients of the eau de cologne, you said orange flower was one you liked, but then what is your second favorite one?
No, my favorite one is bergamot.
Yes.
Because it's one of those ingredients which have the most individual ingredients inside. Bergamot consists of more than 350 molecules. And on the other side, bergamot is very difficult to harvest. This tree is only planted in southern Calabria, and it's harmed very easily by weather, by dryness, and so on. So it's a very delicate and difficult product, and you have so many different smells from bergamot, depending on who is harvesting it, that it's really difficult to get that bergamot you want. unless you go there and speak to the farmers and tell them, please harvest early, not too late, and so on. So bergamot is probably a lifelong learning and a lifelong studying, and that's really the most fascinating ingredients I know.
And you tell me if I'm right or wrong, but the bergamot was used for the first time in Farina's eau de Cologne.
Yeah, I'm a bit. I don't want to say he probably was the first one, but maybe also others did it before. But it's the first one which is recorded.
Yes.
Because we have purchases of bergamot from the beginning, from early 18th century, and outside of our archive, you won't find anything. And this was not from northern Italy; it is from southern Italy.
And what about your favorite object among the Farina art collection? Do you have one?
You mean from the bottles or from the
Yes,
designs?
the bottles or interesting letters or
Yes, what means art collection is something we have also a collection of antique perfume bottles, a big collection, which is quite nice, but it has nothing to do with Farina. It's collected by Farina.
But among the different bottles, Farina, do you have one which you like?
Yes, the Rosoli is quite interesting and our fascinating bottle, but the later designs of the early 20th century by
Vasily Kandinsky?
for example, they designed these bottles at a time when they were not well known, partly before the First World War, and we have hundreds of designs in our archive which were never used and never did go into production. So we still have a stock of many designs which are waiting to be realized.
I will be right back for a second episode in order to continue this fascinating conversation with Johann Maria Farina.